talk about some functions. You can work with functions in JavaScript. We talked about arrays, objects, strings, numbers. That's basically all we talked about so far, right? OK, so functions allow you to define a block of code, optionally name that block, and then call it later as many times as you want. So you can have the same thing do what you want it to do repeatedly. OK? So here's our function declaration. Here we're defining the function. And here we're calling it. OK? So whatever we set up to happen in that first, when we defined it, that's what's going to happen when we call it. Make sense? All right. So you can define functions with parameters, right? Param1, param2. And then you call the functions with arguments. So my function 1 and 2 like that. And so it will use 1 and 2, those strings, in place of param1 and param2 within the function that you defined. And so, so basically, you're using those as local variables. Right. OK. So function, do something, alert, I am something. OK. And then you call the function, and it alerts. And it says, I am something, right? You can also define a function and return something, return a value, right? So I'm going to do function something. Little play on words there. And I'm going to return a plus b. So I'm expecting numbers, right? I guess I could do strings, but it would just concatenate them. And so if I alerted something 1, 2, what would it alert? 3. Awesome. You passed first grade math. All right, and JavaScript. All right, cool. So here's this is kind of cool. You can assign the return value of a function. You can assign a variable to that, right? So this is the same thing, right? We're defining the function. But here we're saying, OK, I'm going to let my sum equal the return value, whatever comes back from that. And then when I alert my sum, that equals the return value of something with 1 and 2, right? And so that will alert what? Yes. OK. The arguments object. Now, this is something that's a little bit different, something a little unique to JavaScript. How many of you have worked with the arguments object before? Yeah, OK. A few of you nodding your heads. Cool. All right. So with the arguments object, every function has one, right? And it's a collection of the arguments passed to the function when it is called. OK. So if I pass 1 and 2 in, the arguments object is going to be a collection containing, it's going to be an array-like object that I can loop through. I can't apply other array functions to, or array methods to, unless I convert it to a true array. But I can loop through it and find out each one of those. So it has a length property, so it'll tell me how many arguments were passed in. Yeah. And what this does is it allows for a variable number of arguments. Right? So you could do something crazy like this, like function log thing. And notice I have no parameters in there. I have no explicit parameters. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for var I equals 0, I is less than arguments.length I++. And then for each one of those, I'm going to console.log the value of that argument. Right? And so if I call it like that, log thing 1, 2, 3 like that, that's what it's going to print to the console. Does that make sense? It's kind of handy.